Hello, U.S. History class. This is Coach Gault. I'm currently creating our digital learning lesson slash project analysis for this week, and I will be explaining on what we're going to be doing this week. If you have your notes, I'm going to be going over the notes just from last Monday. So if you want to find your notes from Digital Learning Day 3/16/2020, I'm going to be talking through these notes. Uh, for those of you who were at school the last Friday, we've already talked through some of these notes, so you can kind of skip forward a little bit. But those of you who weren't, I'm going to talk through it anyway. These are looking at the civil rights movement, and then we're going to talk about the project slash analysis that we're going to be doing this week. It's going to last 2 days. So the civil rights movement, here we go, is mostly in the southern United States. And when I'm talking through these on lecture through video, I'm going to be I'm going to be going pretty quick just because I don't have to wait for you to write your stuff down. So if you have to pause any moment and think and write and maybe email me a question, that's fine. Then come back to it later. That's fine too. If you want to skip forward because you already heard this, that's fine. Just this is a video, so you can go at your own pace. So here we go. Civil rights movement, mostly in the southern United States. If you can follow along with my mouse, I'll be using it to point out some things. But it's mostly in the 50s, 60s, and then we're going to see it go into the 70s and 80s too a little bit. But this is where African Americans are still fighting for their rights not being granted to them by the Constitution. The last time we left off talking about civil rights, we were talking about the NAACP being created. We were talking about the women trying to gain voting rights, which they did with the 19th Amendment. But still, they're facing discrimination with Jim Crow laws. Now, Jim Crow laws is like segregation in the South. They are also unable to vote still because of these literacy tests and poll taxes. And then the KKK is still in the South, still threatening, still kind of keeping African Americans' civil rights away from them. And so we've all know, and we've probably all heard of Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott. And this is where Rosa Parks, she refuses to give up her seat to a white man. She is a member of the NAACP, and she is arrested. And so what these groups like the NAACP are trying to do is once she's arrested, they're going to sue the Montgomery bus company for saying that she has the right to refuse her seat. What's going to happen is they're going to at the bottom here, you see the federal court's going to rule the law in Montgomery as unconstitutional. So it's in favor. The federal court is going to say that the Montgomery bus companies have to desegregate and they have to let blacks and whites sit together. And so bus segregation in Montgomery is going to end it. And this is a huge win, especially this is very early. This is a 1955. This is a huge win for the civil rights movement. The main leader that emerges from this Montgomery bus boycott is Martin Luther King Jr. Again, we've all took Georgia history. We've all heard of Martin Luther King Jr. He's a civil rights activist. He's from Atlanta. He gains popularity. He gains public fame from this Montgomery bus boycott. And his biggest thing is he's using nonviolent protests like marches and boycotts and then once similar to this, they get arrested on purpose. They're breaking the law on purpose. And then once they break the law, they're going to sue through the NAACP. They're going to sue the government. They're going to sue the company that has them arrested. And they're going to try to gain support and gain laws being changed through this way. We're going to talk about his assassination in a few lessons probably. But one thing that he does is he creates this SCLC, which is the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It's very, 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 very important that you know the difference between the SCLC and the SNCC, and that you understand both of them. The SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., he was a pastor, and so he uses his network as a pastor to build up this kind of middle class African Americans. It's large urban areas. So churches from all over the South, especially like Atlanta, like Montgomery, like Columbia, South Carolina, like Nashville, Tennessee, like Memphis, Tennessee, all these urban cities in the South, all their black churches, that's what make up the SCLC. It's very middle class. The SNCC is going to be funded by the SCLC. So the college students, they're poor, they don't have any money, but they're very motivated. And so the SCLC, these middle class African Americans, are going to be giving them money. It was mostly college students, hence the name Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, but there were some whites, college students who joined too. Later, this is actually going to have a split in the Black Panther and form the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party is going to take a little more radical, a little more violent approach to the civil rights movement. We're not going to really talk about them that much, but the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, they do a lot of things. One of the main things they do is here at the bottom right, you see these things called sit-ins. And what they would do is they would literally sit in and take up space at a white-only lunch counter. And you can see it at this picture on the kind of middle right. They're getting made fun of. They're getting drinks poured on them. But, I mean, they were there standing their ground trying to earn and gain, not really earn, they should have already earned their civil rights, trying to gain their civil rights being protected. You see a lot of marches. March for Selma is a famous one. But not all civil rights organizations were for African Americans. We have the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez, which was representing a largely Hispanic group of workers, and they were pushing for higher wages, better working conditions, the ability to strike. Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers will be on a quiz whenever we have a quiz, so make sure you know him. President Truman, so this is right after World War II, 1948, so right before the Korean War. President Truman is going to offer an executive order 9981. And they're going to desegregate the military, meaning the picture at the bottom, you're going to see white people and black people starting to serve in the same military groups. Now, they were hesitant at first, but they had completed the disintegration by 1954. Put a big star, big star, big star, big star next to Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. Brown versus Board of Education at the very bottom. We're going to skip to the bottom. I'm going to talk about it, and then we're going to skip to the bottom. It overturns Plessy v. Ferguson. Now, if you don't remember, Plessy v. Ferguson said that separate but equal is okay. That's what Plessy v. Ferguson said. To give you a little background of this story, so this girl, Linda Brown, she is walking a whole mile. So think about this. So you're walking a mile. I've been walking a mile. It's been taking me about anywhere from 15, 20 minutes on these school from home days. I got to get out and do something. So I've been walking a mile. Anyway, this 9-year-old elementary school girl has to walk a mile. They built a white-only school right across the street from her house. And so her parents were like, this is dumb. It's dangerous for my kid to be walking a mile to school. Just let her walk across the street. It'll be fine. And so basically they enroll her into school. And the school board says, no, you're not allowed to go to this school because it's a white-only school. So then the Brown family, Brown, hence Brown, is going to sue the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. And so the court is going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the court says state laws establishing separate but equal in public schools was unconstitutional. So you see all these red states down here, those all had schools for whites and schools for blacks. And so after 1954, you're going to see that kind of start coming back. It's going to take a long time for some of these schools to integrate. It's not going to integrate fully probably until the late 70s, early 80s in some places. But the main thing you're going to need to know is it overturns Plessy v. Ferguson. MLK's letter from Birmingham jail. So Martin Luther King Jr., he's going to be arrested many times. We talked about how he's a civil disobedient. He's not necessarily doing violent crimes. He's just doing crimes that kind of make him get arrested on purpose. And then he's going to challenge the law that are prohibiting African-American civil rights. And so while he's in jail, he's going to write an open letter to the public. It's going to get published. He addresses that desegregation is happening too fast. He's defending his strategy of nonviolence, and he argues that people have a moral responsibility to break unjust laws. Now, again, you have to think of that. It doesn't mean, oh, I think the speed limit is dumb, I'm going to speed as fast as I want. No, that's stupid. It's saying that if a law is morally unjust, meaning that if it's prohibiting your civil rights, your freedom of speech, etc., that it is a moral responsibility of us, that we have the moral responsibility to break those laws. We'll probably do a short activity on letters from jail maybe next week sometime. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Now, we're going to focus a lot on this. We're going to do an analysis of this. I'm going to show you what we're going to be doing here in a few minutes. So I'm going to kind of skip this from now. Make sure you get the points down, but you'll get a lot of this in the analysis. Assassination of John F. Kennedy. We're probably going to come back to this probably next week too, with a cool. We might look into some conspiracy theories and things like this, but this was a big deal because following Kennedy's assassination, Kennedy was trying to get these two laws passed. And so it was kind of like after the president had got assassinated, the whole country felt terrible. And they're like, oh, man, President Kennedy just got shot. What are we going to do? This guy Johnson is in office now. What are we going to do? And so they were like, we need to honor his legacy and pass these laws that he wanted to pass. And these are super, super, super important. Put a big star. This is one of the biggest takeaways from this lecture. It's going to enforce the 14th and 15th Amendment. So we had talked about literally 100 years ago in 1864 and 1865 at the end of the Civil War, we talked about the 13th, which freed the slaves, the 14th, which gives equal rights to all citizens, and 15th, which promises voting rights. We talked about how all those were passed, 13th, 14th, and 15th. Well, now, literally 100 years later, they're finally becoming enforced. This is a very important slide. Make sure you know both of these things. Make sure, if you haven't already, to go back and do the discussions. Coach Gault's been checking the discussions. If you haven't seen it already, you probably have some grades in Infinite Campus with the discussion. But what I'm going to show you now is this I have a dream speech analysis. And so you're going to follow some directions on the Google Slides, and you're going to be taking a Google Slides presentation and editing it with your own answers. When you turn it in, you're going to turn it in through Canvas, and it's going to go through a Turnitin plagiarism check. So make sure you're not just copying your neighbors or copying your classmates' analysis and turning it in. This YouTube link right here is a good link to follow along with the speech if you want to listen to it. I highly recommend you listen to it. And then this link down here, you're going to click on it, and it's going to take you to this Google slide. What I want you to do when you get to this is, because this is only going to give you access to view the Google Slides, you will need to make a copy of it in your Google Drive. So what you're going to do is you're going to go right here, you're going to go File. You're going to go to make a copy right here. Entire presentation. Boom. And then you can rename it whatever you want. I would probably take it, and I'll just put this, and I just might put my name, speech, Emmy, Gault, and then I would pick where I want to save it to. So if you have a link in my class, or if you just want to send it to your Google Drive, and then I just might hit OK. And then once you hit OK, it's going to come up with your own copy of it. And so then it says MLK, I Have a Dream speech, Jimmy Gault, even though my name's not spelled right. But then it has all the directions of how to make a text box and everything like that. So make a text box, you go up here, right here where it says T. And then you can edit. So there's going to be some places here. Here you're just going to read it, but then it's got some questions. Who is the intended audience? So you just go to T, make a text box, and then you can write American people or whatever you think the intended audience is. It's pretty much the American people. Again, if you have any questions on this, like always, please contact me. If you want me to Zoom, I might open up a Zoom on Thursday for people who have problems or people who have questions. This is going to be for a grade. I have it due March 29th. That means that's next Sunday. So by next Sunday, it's not super, super long. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slides where you actually have to write stuff. 3 of the slides are the speech, and one of the slides is just instructions. Again, U.S. history, keep up the good work. Y'all are doing great. Like always, email me if you have any questions. I will see y'all later.